Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, rejoined once more by Sim for a very special review. We are doing a spoiler discussion on Season 1 of The Rings of Power, which, of course, as of today, has now completed, and the whole season is out for you to stream on Prime Video. But before we start getting into any of that stuff, Sim, how are we doing today?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. I was loving the intro. First time I said it, actually, so I appreciated the intro, man. Well done, smash it. But yeah,
No
doing
worries.
really good. Looking forward to this review.
Excellent. And we had a lovely tribute to Robbie Coltrane, who obviously passed away today. And we just wanted to put that in there as well. Obviously, I know it's Lord of the Rings, but we don't normally live stream with something big like this. So thoughts and condolences of the family. And it's always a very weird segue to move on from that. But we have Martin in the comments as well. Lovely to see you, Martin, as always. And for anybody joining us live, for anybody that's checking out down the line, please do comment your thoughts on the Rings of Power. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and even subscribe if you enjoy this. Season 1, of course, is finished today, but there are 5 seasons locked in, no more, no less, 40 episodes. Season 2 is filming as we speak. Well, maybe not tonight, they might wrap for the day, but Season 2 is filming. I think there's a massive Lord of the Rings event in London site, actually, now that springs to mind, for Empire Podcast. But as you said, this is a spoiler discussion, so you can comment all your spoilers, all your thoughts, all that sort of stuff. And if you are new to the channel, if you're new to the series, if you're new to what we do, of course, we're a film and TV channel. We do a lot of reviews. The reason I've chucked TV in there is there's a lot of TV happening. We've got House of the Dragon, which is airing at the moment. We've got Andor, which is airing. She-Hulk just finished, which we need to sort something out. I've not seen it yet. I don't know. But yeah, if you want to find out about other videos, other things going on, because there's quite a lot. We'll go into a bit more detail at the end. But get us on our social medias, Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and networks.com/cinema-savvy, and a link to Redbubble in the description where you can pick up some of our merch. But aside from all that, Sim, as I mentioned, it's lovely to get you back on. And
Cheers,
I'm
mate.
not going to put you on the spot, but I think as we're sort of talking about the whole of Season 1 of this, I'm just going to politely hand over to you and just ask, what are your thoughts, even preceding this series? What are your thoughts on the Lord of the Rings trilogy or the Hobbit trilogy or even, some of Tolkien's writing? I know you're more familiar than I am. I'd just love to, people at home, just to get a bit of background.
To be fair, I think it's been about a decade since I actually really got into Tolkien. I actually read The Hobbit when I was about 16, so I was really late in the game, but fell in love with the book and fell in love with Tolkien. Great books. Probably done some damage to my A-levels because I was reading those more than I was my revision guides. But anyway, yeah, great books. Great to get your teeth into. What can I say? The movies, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is fantastic. You can't knock it. The Hobbit wasn't too much of a fan, but it works the opposite way around. I actually really like The Hobbit because it's just a nice, simple, quick story. Whereas the Lord of the Rings is huge. It's proper juicy. One of our good friends. I don't know if we can mention names or not. Dom,
Yeah, no,
anyways.
do it. Dom, yeah.
Cool. Dom, he always used to say "Oh, mate, wait till you get to the appendices of the Lord of the Rings trilogy." And I was like, "Yeah, no," and he's right. That's where the proper juice is, all the details and stuff. So yeah, obviously the literature is great. Movies wise, I'd say the original trilogy trumps the Hobbit trilogy, unfortunately.
No, that's absolutely fine to say. And yeah, no, shout out to Dom because I remember when we saw, was it the third Hobbit film in Birmingham?
Destination Smaug. It was second.
There was a photo shoot, wasn't there, of you two in Birmingham at the IMAX. So yeah, it is an interesting one. We've got Martin saying so much great streaming content. He's appreciate you joining in, and we've got Halbrand as well in the comments. But aside from that, yeah, Lord of the Rings is an interesting one because I've not had the chance to speak about it on the channel before. I know that there were some reviews that went out last year for the anniversary. I know you wanted to be a part of them, but for whatever reason, you weren't allowed to be on those videos too. I have a very interesting history with this where we were in year 8 or 9. I'm not going to just talk about school things that people don't know, but we had a very, very good friend called Pepe. And he was a very big Lord of the Rings fan. And I remember it must have been the summer between year 8 and year 9. And I think, when you used to go into HV, you get reduced box sets. It was like Lord of the Rings. And I was like, okay, I've seen these posters before. I don't know what it is. I remember a PS2 game my cousins had. But I was like, I was getting into film more, so I remember watching the trilogy, and I was like, yeah, these are good. Okay, cool. Moved on. At that age where it's like, you're just watching film, you're going through film history and stuff. So it didn't really do much for me. And then when The Hobbit came out, the first one, I remember following it again through you and Dom. There would have been it came out in the first year of A levels, so I remember it would have been the summer of year 11. And I remember trailers were coming out, and that's when I started to get more aware. And when HMV went bust, ironically, that's when I got the you can't see it, I've got the extended edition Blu-ray box set, which I picked up like a tenner. Which is, I didn't know there were extended editions. I didn't know, the difference. It was just like watching some films for the first time, and I really enjoyed them.
It's like nearly 15 hours worth of cinema,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like watching
I remember
trilogy.
I just remember though, like you'd have to swap discs because I've never done this before, swapping discs. And they still haven't fixed it for the 4Ks apparently. And that box should have with me. I've had the honor of meeting a few of the cast members actually. So it's signed by Peter Jackson, Viggo Mortensen, and Ian McKellen. Not to name drop, but I know there's some very big. A good friend of mine's a massive Tolkien fan, so I've been able to meet a lot of people with him. And a few red carpets. We've been very lucky over the years. But moving on aside from that, let's talk about Rings of Power. So The Hobbit came out, The Hobbit went. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I'm not you. I don't think it's as good as the Lord of the Rings. I don't think you probably would ever get it as good as Lord of the Rings because it's a trilogy. It shouldn't be a trilogy. I've read the Hobbit book. I've not read Lord of the Rings. I think I read the Hobbit before the third one came out, and it was like he gets knocked out and he wakes up and the battle's done. I was like, oh, okay. And that's kind of been it until the Rings of Power got announced. As I said, I very much enjoy the films, but I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore Lord of the Rings fan. I think I respect it more than I enjoy it in truth. And I know, obviously, I've known you for however long. Without asking you to judge me, I'd say like I'm more of a science fiction follower than fantasy. Is that fair to say?
If the posters don't give it away, I think
there's
half belongs to Star Wars.
But like I've had this amazing thing with in June came out last year. Now I read I read the first book of Dune like in the space of a couple of days. And what I remember distinctly more than anything was all of these comparisons to Lord of the Rings. And after watching Dune, I was just sort of sat there like, why are people comparing Dune to Lord of the Rings? They're not alike. I think because one's deemed sci-fi, the other's deemed fantasy, and they're both so-called unfilmable. And I think that's really where the comparisons should begin and end. Is that they were both dubbed the unfilmable fantasy science fiction things. Obviously, a lot of sci-fi is borrowed from Dune. A lot of fantasy has borrowed from Middle Earth. And what I'd also say, bringing up Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, obviously airing now. Big fan of that. Picked up Fire and Blood to read because I'm on a few long train journeys the next couple of days. I would say Game of Thrones like nabbed bits of Dune, nabbed bits of Middle Earth, and combined it together, and that's how Game of Thrones is for me. So we're in a really interesting stage where, Game of Thrones was a gargantuan hit TV-wise. There's no denying that. Game of Thrones has changed the face of small-scale storytelling, I think you can call it. With TV series, it's shown you can do big, expensive productions on TV, and Lord of the Rings in turn being
Game of Thrones really kicked off the silver screen, didn't it? That was like the era of TV that kicked off with Game of Thrones.
I think that's the era when Mr. Marvel and Star Wars are watching, saying, "Oh, they're doing expensive stuff on the small screen, and people are watching it." And I think we're in this phase now where heading into where the Rings of Production got announced. Not the Rings of Production, sorry, the Rings of Power.
Rings of Power.
Obviously, I remember reading the news like Amazon had just come out of the blue and they'd purchased the rights from the Tolkien. They made an agreement, sorry, not bought the rights. They'd made an agreement for 5 seasons, spanning 40 episodes, covering the Second Age. That was as vague as the announcement. Now there's been some news in the last few days. I don't know if you're familiar with this, that originally it's actually come out of the Tolkien estate, put the rights on sale. They wanted a small screen adaptation. Netflix pitched them a Lord of the Rings remake, but they would do 1 season per character and merge it together at the end for Lord of the Rings, which sounds awful. HBO did a terrible pitch. I can't remember what that one was. And then Amazon came in saying, let us do the Second Age. And obviously it went to them. So I
Mm.
think that's quite a big thing. But what I want to kind of ask you is, again, with your background being a little bit more than mine, I know you've not read them for a while, but when this show was announced, what was your thoughts, or maybe even spanning up to it coming out in the last few weeks, the marketing, the casting, all that sort of stuff?
What did I think? So originally, I read an article about 3 years ago. Like there was rumors of like Amazon Prime taking adapting Lord of the Rings, and I was like, oh, cool. So we're gonna get a like Lord of the Rings TV show. I didn't hear much more than that, and then I think we discussed it a couple of weeks after, maybe on the group chat or whatever, and you said no, actually they're gonna do the Second Age, and I was like, right, run to the books, run to Silmarillion or something like that, because I think for those who aren't familiar with Tolkien's work, Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, they're not too far in timeline. They're not very far away from each other. However, there's a book called the Silmarillion, which kind of like starts off with like the beginning of Middle Earth and the whole kind of the world. So that's where you kind of lean towards, is you thought, okay, so it's going to be inspired by that. But funnily enough, watching it, there's a couple of things that I saw that were maybe throwback, not throwbacks, but mentions of like Lord of the Rings, or like within the book, like sorry to jump like ahead,
That's right.
but there's a song, I think it's in episode 5, one of the Half-Foots sings. What's her name? The main Half-Foot. Yeah, I've
Poppy,
stumped.
one of the girls.
The main,
There's a lot. There's a lot of
Half-Foot.
characters
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
forgetting at the moment.
No, but you know who she is, and like she's she sings a song which there's a line where does it go? It says something like those who wander who are not always lost, and like obviously that's a mention that's mentioned in the books. I think it's in the Fellowship of the Ring. So I can't remember who sings it actually. Is it Aragorn? I can't remember. Anyway, so yeah, there's mentions of the books in there, so it was really cool. But like my initial thoughts were, okay, it's all Silmarillion. But no, I like, as I said, it's been a long time since I've read the books and things like that. But yeah, it's predating The Hobbit, and that like that's my realms of comfort as such. But like it opened up my eyes to a lot of things, like like King Durin, and the Mount Khazad-dûm. Yeah, Khazad-dûm. Excuse me. So yeah, that's all. That like I've always wondered. Oh, I wonder what that would be like on screen, and things like that. So in many respects, I really appreciated the Prime taking over the show, because all the ideas I used to have, like as like a teenager, I wonder what that's like. I wonder what that. It's basically exploring the world of Middle Earth, and it's given us a chance to kind of live what our imagination has taken us to. So yeah, it's been great. I really enjoyed watching it, albeit in drips and drabs, because life life takes over. But yeah, it's been really good. I really enjoyed it.
No, that's great. I mean, just quickly, the Harfoot's Nori.
Nori,
There's so many, and this is like one thing I'll speak about. Like the cast list for this is insane, and there's been 8 episodes, and I can't tell you most of the names still. I don't think that's a criticism. It's more like it's like Game of Thrones. I know you're not watching House of Dragon yet, but you've got names like Rhaenyra, Rhaenyra's, Aegon, Aemond's. It's all like so similar, and it's like. There's so many names to learn across so many different shows at the moment. Even Cassian, we've got a new Star Wars cast, and you've got to learn so many new names as well. It's such a strange time that so much prestige TV with the big franchises. And kind of my thoughts ring as a part. I mean, I was very lucky to have been invited to the press screening just before the first 2 episodes came out, so I got to see the first 2 episodes at cinema. But the big thing for me, and this might sound a bit, what's the word? Not arrogant, but my biggest hype for this show was that it was the most expensive TV show ever made, because I've always been a bit of a freak with like production values, qualities, that sort of stuff. And I just thought the concept of this is $400 million season 1. It's $50 million an episode.
Wow.
I wanted to see that. I wanted to see like how is this going to look, because you've got some shows that look incredible, and production design doesn't mean it's going to be good, but at the same time, I'm like, I'd say I've got a pretty good setup at home, so I'm very confident watching TV. I'm not torrenting stuff. I'm not watching stuff on 360p like some, but I've got a nice 4K TV there. I've got a nice surround sound, and I've spent years sort of doing it my own surroundings, not knowing that the TV is going to come, but I'm very fortunate in that regard. And I've got some friends that have to watch stuff on computers, which is fine. I know people that watch it whilst they're working, which is understandable. So it's really interesting. And this is kind of the downside of TV, that when you've got prestigious shows like this, I would love to be at a cinema watching this. Now, would I say I want to go to the cinema for 7 weeks in a row? No. Could I do 2 days where they show 4 episodes each? Yes. Like, it'd be so much more entertaining, and I'd much rather be in that environment, because what I'm going to say, like, immediately going back to seeing it early, the first 2, it looked incredible, and it still does. Martin's asked, how does it look in the comments? Honestly, like, it is unbelievable, some of the production design in this. It does not look like it's a TV show. And what I will say, granted, it's the second age, not the third age, it still looks like it's Middle Earth. It's still, I know they can't reference the films directly due to legal rights or whatnot, but it looks like a continuation in that sense, that they've not gone so far out there with a different kind of like a really on point one maybe is like Harry Potter, right? You look at Hogwarts in Chamber of Secrets and then Prisoner of Azkaban. They've changed the geography, they've changed a lot of the design. I think it works long term because they stick with it from Azkaban onwards, but there's something blatantly changing in between those two films. Whereas with something like this, just whenever we get like an establishment of like Numenor or Mordor at the end, which is one of the biggest surprises to me, I didn't realize. I mean, again, I've not read it, right? So I didn't realize. I don't know if you might know the entire time they're on Mordor. We're going to talk about Mordor in a bit, but just
I did.
The final shot of this series is one of my favorite final shots I've seen in a TV show in a very long time. Because that was just fucking amazing.
The one where it goes to Southlands.
Yeah. No. The final of episode 8, when you've got Sauron, the mountains blown up and Sauron's on top of the hill, like final shot today. It just looks incredible. And again, story is more important than production design, but that's a big thing for me. And even in Middle Earth, the music. Bear McCreary's doing the score to this. It's pretty impressive across the 8 episodes. It feels different. You shouldn't be playing. I mean, ironically, the intro for this is the Lord of the Rings theme. But the Cinema Savvy Lord of the Rings logo is obviously the Fellowship as well. But it's one of them where it's like, okay, this is a different era. And although we've got all this other stuff, they're not tailoring it to like, here's a theme we know. Here's, oh, look, half of us, let's put a bit of the Shire theme in, because we know ultimately they're gonna become what the Hobbits are.
Isn't Howard Shore doing the soundtrack?
He does the main theme for the title credits, but he's Bear McCreary, who I think's done Highlanders, doing the main score. But they've worked with each other on it, and he's done fantasy before. I think he does God of War. I've not actually played the PS4 game. God of War. I know Eamon's a big fan.
Wait, you've not played God of War, as in the one?
None of them, not even the old ones, not the new one. Well, I played a bit of it. I just didn't like it. I turned it off. I didn't like
trust me, you're gonna love the.
I climbed up a mountain. I climbed up a mountain. They're like, "This is the wrong mountain. Go climb another one." I was like, "Fuck off!" So I turned off the trailer. I was that annoyed. Ironically, I'm probably going to lay into people that have no patience shortly with this series. But what I want to kind of bring up as well, and I don't know if we're entering a dark hole if we do this.
Go for it.
Obviously, there's been a lot of social media stuff with this series. There's been a lot of outrage. I was in a really interesting car journey last week. We're driving to Edinburgh with one of my friends, and he's mixed race, and he's a massive Lord of the Rings fan. He's the one I mentioned earlier. He's met a lot of the people. He's met most of the Fellowship. And we were just talking about it, because I said I was up to episode 5 last week, so I was 2 behind. So obviously I caught up this week, but he was talking about Arondir, who's the elf in this, played by Ismael Cruz Cordova, who I think is probably one of the best things in this series. And I just want to talk about one thing we've seen over the last 7 weeks is there's been horrendous racist abuse put at the cast throughout from the day they were cast. So Lenny Henry's part of that, who's spoke about it at length.
Wait, is that Lenny Henry? No, the one yeah. Of course.
I mean, if Lenny Henry wants to play an elf, I'd be very curious to see it for a couple of minutes. But I just wanted to bring up that without getting into certain stuff, and I'm just going to reaffirm, I've had to say like every TV show recently, because it's doing my head in. You can have valid criticism of a show. Nobody has issues with criticisms of shows. I don't have issues with criticisms of shows. But when your criticisms are people's skin color, where they're from, shit like that does not stand. And if your criticism is that, not of their performance, not of their story, not of their character, it's just a massive fuck off. And we've had to fuck someone off already. And you're not going to say anything, so you'll be back in videos, don't worry. But yeah, it's I just wanted to kind of turn this into something more positive, where of the duration of this, we've had the 4 original Hobbits come out doing charity work, encouraging, they've done a lot of stuff for this, talking about the races in this current cast have featured. Orlando Bloom has come out. I think it was at the Emmys, had a photo with Ismael Cruz Cordova, of course, playing the elf in this. And what I've really enjoyed is seeing the original cast. I mean, not that you shouldn't have to do it in the first place. I don't want to put you on the spot and talk to you about stuff like that, but I really like the fact that everyone has come out in defense of this. And I'm just going to make that final thing and say, you can dislike a series, fine, but your dislike just cannot be the color of their skin. That does not work. And I don't know how many times I have to say the word adaptation. It's an adaptation. It's fine when Peter Jackson makes loads of changes, but when Amazon make 1 or 2, or I go back as far as I don't want to get into a talk on the books when I read them, but it's me, an outsider who has no intention of reading them. I'm sorry. When I found out the Silmarillion wasn't actually published by Tolkien, it was his son. He took scraps of sentences, put it together. And here we go. I get it, but that's not Tolkien's published work. That's his son. And it's the same thing with Dune, is that Herbert's son published a load of stuff after he died as well. And I disagree with that. That's just my mindset. It'd be like, not the best person to speak about at the moment, but like J.K. Rowling, if she suddenly died tomorrow and her daughter's like, by the way, like here's like 3 books that are just sentences of Harry Potter lore, I'd be like, it's not really J.K. Rowling, though, is it?
Yeah. So, well, it's one of those, isn't it? It's like
it's tricky, isn't it?
It's not direct. The Silmarillion is not purely like a complete works from Tolkien himself. So, yeah, okay. So it's give or take like that. It's been, adapted itself in many ways. But going back to the point of like the racism and backlash from the show, it's just it is a bit funny, really. It's like I don't really get it. Like I think maybe there is more. There should be more emphasis on that. The majority of the cast in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy was white instead of like Tolkien's literature, like because like the bloke was he existed 100 years ago. He was alive like 100 years ago, like and onwards. Like I'm pretty sure he lived through the world wars and whatever. So like we're talking a different era. He like his world is completely different to the world we live in today, and so it's not going to represent our society. And it's like especially in the last 5-6 years, that the emphasis on inclusion and like representation in media has come to the fore. And so some people aren't going to like it, but it's the way society's moving. And well, if you don't like it, I'd
have to watch.
Yeah. Just shut
no
up.
one.
It's not a big deal.
Jeff Bezos isn't telling you to watch the show, by the way. He'd like to, but he's hardly gonna be financially worried about 10 people's thoughts that are quite loud, and it kind of just pales me. It's playing on what he said, like the one thing that's really got me is like the abuse of like Lenny Henry. I mean, is anyone that's been abused their skin color, to be fair, but the Harfoots, like in the books, have been described as like darker skinned.
Have they? Well, they
So
all
I'm there
got
like,
curly
so
hair,
why?
so come on, like
And
it's not.
I'm like, why are you giving Lenny Henry abuse? Right? Shouldn't it be
Mm.
everyone else in the
To be
Harfoots getting
fair,
abuse?
like, and like, I'm not like this is my criticism. It's nothing to do with skin or anything. Like, I just didn't like Lenny Henry as a Harfoot. I'd rather
It's
him
very
as
weird to see him
another
in top. I will
character.
say it's
Oh,
very weird to see Lenny Henry
mm.
in. I mean, for me, I didn't even know his comedy when I was younger. I just remember the premiering adverts.
Oh god, yeah.
And he played the shrunken head in Prisoner of Azkaban.
Mm.
But
Wait, is that
yeah,
Lenny Henry?
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I
No
took me years to
way.
find out. And obviously, he was married
Bloody
to
hell.
Dawn French, who was obviously in that as well. Had a cameo. It's the fat lady in the portrait at Gryffindor.
Yeah, she was she was in Hogwarts. I
So
remember that
yeah, a
one. Yeah.
lot of things like that.
No.
But it is it's a fascinating discussion and it's tricky. But again, I'm just gonna you could get on anything. And like I know somebody that's been watching this that's enjoying the show, but they're Irish and they don't like the fact all the Harfoots are essentially are all the Irish gypsy stereotypes, which I understand that too. That's more
Yeah.
valid than the color of somebody's skin. So it's going more back to the point. I know we're not talking about the specifics of the series, but this is like the actress that's playing Durin's wife, who I think is great in this. I think she has to leave social media from all the abuse she got, and she's been one of the best things in this. So it's just really sad, and a lot of it is outrage culture. People go to outrage culture now, like geeks and gamers. I don't really want to give limelight to some of those channels, Nordrotics. You see a lot of them on social media, and they hated Game of Thrones until Game of Thrones became good. They all hated that House Dragon was suddenly woke, and then it wasn't woke because it was popular. And people are just there's a lot of silly people that get misled online. And as I said, if you've got a valid issue of the show that you think the storytelling doesn't make, great. But I'm not going to have someone sit there and be like, it's physically impossible for you to exist. I was like, well, it isn't because it's an adaptation. And again, Peter Jackson's trilogy, they changed a lot. Ian McKellen has spoken in the past about all the homophobic abuse he had when he was cast as Gandalf. And it's really, really hypocritical. So I'm going to leave that part there because I want to talk about the series properly.
Okay, cool. I was gonna join in, but not. It's cool.
No. You can if you want. I mean, because it's tricky though.
It's just a shame because like that kind of subculture of people who do complain, like they are missing out on a great story and series because they can't get over the fact that the color of someone's skin is not how they picture it. And it's like, well, I feel sorry for you because you're not enjoying this, and like that's the way I see it, anyways, man. Like you should just like come along and enjoy the series, man. It's not, it shouldn't be a big deal, especially in this day and age.
And the Galadriel stuff too is just ridiculous. We're going to talk about Galadriel at the end. So what we're going to do, people at home, we've got the three key storylines. So we've got the Harfoots, we've got the dwarfs, and I'm calling it Galadriel plus elves, and that will include like all the stuff of Numenor, Arondir, Sauron, Mount Doom. So that's the main event. So what we'll do again, it's a bit different. We would have done these week by week, but it's been so busy on the channel recently, we just couldn't justify doing it week by week. So we're going to kickstart talking the Harfoots. And I'm just going to, I mean, we can say it, he's obviously, after a couple of episodes, we knew there was this stranger. I think everyone in the world had worked out he was a wizard. It was probably going to be Gandalf. They haven't outright called him Gandalf, but we know he is one of the wizards, and he literally says a line Gandalf does. I'm just going to ask you, how did you find all this arc? So we've got a Nori, Poppy, Lenny Henry, the stranger they call him. How do you find that across the season? Like, because if I kickstart my thoughts first, I'm going to say I liked it, and I think maybe this is not a criticism of the show itself, but I think this series took about 4 episodes to really get things moving. And my kind of mindset with that is that okay, it took half a season 1 for me to get a show moving, but we have the knowledge that this is a 5-season order. It's not 1 season can get cancelled onwards. There are going to be 5 seasons and 40 episodes, no more, no less. It's the agreement with the Tolkien estate. Amazon's put the money in. So I'm kind of there, like, I'm more chill because looking at it at the end of season 1, where this series has now ended, there's clearly another adventure in play that the Harfoots were only there to set up Nori going on an adventure with what is clearly Gandalf.
Yep.
So I'm in a weird one with this because I enjoyed spending time with them, although it felt at times a bit pointless. I guess I've got to look at it from this was like 8 hours of TV, and we got maybe a total of 2.5 hours with these guys, and I didn't mind it. But also looking at the history of Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, we know the half-that's gone to become them. It's kind of important that we have that sense of not scale. That sounds unfair, but it's not just about the bigger picture of what's happening with Galadriel and Sauron. This is telling a story of the second age of Middle Earth. So I'm curious. I mean, I think I know where it's going to go down the line. I think the Harfoots will probably end season 5 setting up the Shire or something like that. I don't know, but it was a weird story. But I kind of want to get out of the way first because there wasn't much, meat to it. But at the same time, I quite enjoyed them. I don't know. How do you feel?
So Harfoots, they're like the nomadic ancestors of the hobbits, and so it was nice to see a hobbit essentially after so long. I was a bit confused at the start. I was like, "Wait, where's the Shire?" But obviously, the Shire doesn't exist yet. What did I like about it? You know what it is? It's like if you look at Lord of the Rings and you look at the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings just have one focal Hobbit to focus on. There's nothing really much to do with the Shire. The Shire is just like this out of the way place that like they're clueless about what all the crazy things that happening around Middle Earth, and so yeah, it was a bit strange in in terms of actually watching the lives of these Harfoots. It was okay. I think they have a big role, and because in terms of like the development of Gandalf, you can see that that's why you probably have the fondness of he has such a fondness of hobbits from carrying on into the third age. But yeah, Harfoot's great. I'm not like they didn't make the series for me, but they weren't a bad I wasn't like, oh gosh, hobbits kind of thing. So yeah, it's good. But then touching on Gandalf, or what is he?
The
We don't know.
stranger they're calling him, aren't
the
they? They still won't
stranger.
say his name.
I'm calling him Gandalf. So anyway,
We know he is. We know he is.
yeah, and so from what I thought, I thought that there was 5 wizards that landed on Middle Earth at the same time. So you got the White Wizard, Saruman. I don't think he's established as the White Wizard just yet, but or in this age. But then you have Gandalf, obviously, and there's a thing that I can't remember it fully, but I think Gandalf was scared to actually go and face Sauron because is it the Valar that send him down anyway? They send him down, and yeah, he's kind of scared of defeating or fighting Sauron. And then of course a Hobbit favorite, Radagast the Brown, he comes down. And so you got the White Wizard, Grey Wizard, and the Brown Wizard, and then there's 2 Blue Wizards. Now the Blue Wizards, they head south and they head east, so they're not really part of the whole that Middle Earth, the Battle of for Mordor and things like this in the Third Age. But I think Gandalf briefly mentions them in The Hobbit. I think he goes, I very much forgot their names. So I think Bilbo asks him a question. Anyway, yeah, I'm curious where Saruman and Radagast the Brown are. That would be my next, hopefully within the next few seasons we'll find that out. But from what I understand of the Order of the Wizards, they were sent down to help the free peoples, or the elves, the dwarves, and the men, to defeat Sauron However, they were not meant to get too involved, if that makes sense. So it's like more like a guide or a principle, like to help the free people you defeat Sauron with their own devices, essentially. And so they're not allowed to use power against Sauron because from what I understand, I think they're just as powerful as Sauron. So I know Sauron's like the big scare, the big bad, but I think like Gandalf, Saruman, people like that are like as powerful. I'm not like, don't quote me on this. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I was of the understanding of. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, Gandalf. I think we'll see him develop over the seasons.
Definitely. We've got a quick con by FM Ghost. I don't understand the time and the show. Just take it as what I do, face value. It's set in the Second Age. I found out recently that the Lord of the Rings is like meant to be like 300 years or something in the books.
Lord of the Rings is meant to be how many years?
Meant to be like 200, 300 years apparently.
Yeah.
If that's true, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Obviously, again, this is me who hasn't read the books, who's on the film side of it all. So, there's things that, again, why aren't people complaining that Peter Jackson didn't tell everyone it covered 200 years, yet they'll complain at anything Amazon do. So it's just this very weird mindset.
Age that well, that fast.
But this is it, and it's like, when you have an intellectual property, you have to adapt. You have to adapt it for the big screen or the silver screen or whatever you want to call TV or film. You have to make changes. It's basic storytelling capabilities, and it's like when you get films based off real life. They have to put inspired by true events or based on true events. It never is the true events unless you're watching an edited documentary. And it's just amazing at how people misread certain things. But moving on from that, we spoke a lot about the Gandalf stuff, because again, I'm like you. It wasn't the big story for me, but maybe it's one that will grow over the years. But it makes like a nice side piece. Like, okay, we're going to get away from the doom and gloom for a couple of minutes and spend times with these. And it's really funny when they're getting chased by those wolf things. I don't know why. But
yeah.
Again, maybe that happened a lot in the book. I don't know. But if we move on to the next one, we'll talk about. Is this my favorite? I don't know. We're going to talk about. I'm just going to call it the dwarves. This is essentially the Durin and Elrond storyline, right? And I'm going to say this. I don't mind the Hobbit films. I don't think they're particularly great. I don't think they're as bad as some people would also say. I would call them maybe a missed opportunity, and I pin that down to Warner Brothers more so than Peter Jackson or Guillermo del Toro dropping out. I'd say this a Warner Brothers fault more than anything else. I can't fault the cast they had for it. I think the cast was great. Some designs were weird. That it's like, here's like 8 dwarves that look like dwarves from Lord of the Rings. Here's Aidan Turner looking like Aidan Turner, and there are some issues I have with it where some of these probably, how would I say, finishing off the Hobbit and coming and says like, okay, I'm really curious about how they do the dwarf stuff, but I'm just gonna say like immediately, I've spoke about the visuals and how great a lot of it is. This storyline is to me where I've really saw that budget, like when we're at Khazad-dûm, right? Where obviously they are in the Fellowship, where we go there, they're all dead, etc. This is where you start seeing the money on screen. Like the production design of the dwarves, they look incredible. I got to ask the actor of God, I've forgotten his name, the actor that plays Durin. I'm just going to Owen Arthur. So we were at the press conference and they answered a couple of our questions. So we put them on the channel. Actually, they're in a playlist. And I asked about, what was it like putting on the costumes for the first time? And he said it took him like 2-3 hours to get into makeup every day. And it just looked right. I mean, again, we're making that jump that we're seeing Lord of the Rings on the small screen. And yet a lot of other shows that do dwarves type stuff, you might get loads of CGI. You might have less of them. You might have far more human features with maybe a big beard or a big nose. But this looked like the films. And I'm just going to give credit to the production team, the makeup artists, the production designers. This felt right. And this storyline for me, obviously, it's more about, ultimately it's about mining the mithril. and here's a big thing. I didn't say earlier when we were talking about some of the race stuff, but to me, one of the core concepts of Lord of the Rings is that it's about different races putting aside their differences, coming together to take on the greatest evil. That's literally the relationship of so many of the characters. Certainly, oh god, Gimli and Legolas, and that's one of the best relationships in those films. Is those two together? And I just loved Elrond and Durin in this. That when they were together, I just thought Owen Arthur, who plays Durin in this, I think is probably I think he's been my favorite performance of the entire season. That's because there's just something so charming about him. Like, he's funny, but he's serious. You can see him doing his duties as a prince. And I think he's had one of the best roles of the series. He's had some of the best writing. And again, the benefit of being on the small screens, you get to spend more time with them. That when you're watching TV, every scene you have with them, it's not like a film where it's like, here's three important sentences, and I'll do your 3 important sentences. We get to have conversations, we get to build up relationships, and I think that's where this series sort of blossomed, was everything with Durin and Elrond. And the big thing for me was the argument in the, I don't know if it's a lift or whatever they call them in fantasy genre, but it's like, 20 years for an elf is nothing, but for 20 years of a dwarf, that's me getting married, that's me having children. It's a big part of my lifetime. And I think it was those moments where the series really started to stand apart. But how do you feel about the whole subplot or the two characters there?
So I've got a very big soft spot for the dwarves of Middle Earth. They are my favorite part of the free folk. They are just rough around the edges, rude, greedy, but they are so passionate. Like, they are very passionate peoples, and so I've always loved the dwarves. Gimli, the all the dwarves of Erebor. That so far, the one consistent thing with every Tolkien adaptation on screen, the dwarves have not missed a trick at all. I've loved every single dwarf that's has been on screen. It's been great. But yeah, this I know you were just about to say it, but this is my favorite part of the whole series. Is the Durin's folk. Yeah, it was a pleasure to kind of see Durin, and so we hear it a lot in The Hobbit, like Durin's folk, descendants of Durin, and so from what I remember, Durin the first was said to come, not reincarnate, but to come back here as I think 7 times, and so obviously it's not actual reincarnation or anything. It's more like his descendants will no essentially it's like during the first he's dead, he dies, and so his son will carry on as will succeed him, and then he may have a grandson who looks just like his granddad, and then he'll be named Durin, and then something about his spirit or his character will resemble Durin as well. And so so it's like monarchies as is now, except for there's a bit more there's a bit more there's a bit more.
That's not me talking about the Targaryens, that's the Windsor family too.
Yeah, exactly. And so good joke. Anyway, yeah, so I've loved seeing that exact. I've always wanted to, because you always hear it Durin's folk, and I think is it I See Fire, Ed Sheeran, I think he ends it on Durin's son, and so it's all referencing Durin. So who's this great Durin? And we've seen live action a Durin on screen, which is flipping fantastic. I want to say fucking, and I'm going to say it. It was fucking fantastic. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But yeah, no, the doors were great, and that production's incredible. But I think they have to invest in the dwarves mountains, because that's a very tricky thing to get right, just like creating scenes of it. It is a big kind of like, these are massive caves within the mountain, like like they have to be, like there has to be a lot of CGI involved. What can I say? So like you could essentially say like Elrond and Durin are the original Gimli and Legolas, right? Like that there's that like friendly banter and whatnot, but like everything about Durin, this whole series I've loved. Like the way he's like, you know how they like the doors and that, like are they're quite hard, rough around the edges, like very mean or whatever. But he brings such a like human element to it. The way you mentioned it already, when after that challenge, they Elrond's trying to like have extend his ear essentially, like just have his attention just for a bit more, and Durin like cracks and he says, "You missed my wedding, you missed the birth of my kids, you missed all this," and it's like that was my like you've missed so many vital moments, and like that was one touching moment like between friends. And then one like piece that I think probably is my favorite scene in the whole series is when Durin, his father, King Durin, finds him mining mithril for Elrond, and he has this one-on-one where he's like, he really like breaks, and he's like, it's this incredible relationship between like a father and son, of like having this son who wants to please his father in so many like like he wants to be his dad essentially, like achieve great things and always like please his father, but and honor him, but there's something inside him that's yearning and he needs to break out. And it's like he literally like he goes, he's talking to his father and he's like, I think he says something along the lines of um you suppress every like desire, every passion, every like everything. And it's like that is like it's such like it's a great scene on its own. Like you can have that in literally any format, like any movie or any TV show. That'd be a great, that's such an impactful conversation as is. But like within this within Lord of the Rings is great. Anyway, so yeah. Owen is the actor's name. Owen, what's his name?
It is for Durin. It's Owain Arthur.
Owen Arthur. So he's Durin the Fourth, right? He's been incredible. I think he's probably been my favorite character in the whole series. Every single time, I was like, and not in like a bad way, but I was looking forward to the dwarf scenes. I was buzzing for them. But yeah, it's getting quite interesting as well though, because like they're mining mithril, right? And we know mithril comes in. That is the chainmail that Frodo wears in. It was given to him as a gift from. God no, I can't even remember. I think it's from Lord Elrond. Oh, Gladriel, yeah. No, because he has it in Fellowship.
Or maybe it is Elrond.
Maybe it's Elrond. Oh, I don't even remember. Anyway, so yeah, so he gets the chainmail of mithril, so we know it's a very important part of like the dwarves, because I think when he's given it as a gift, he said that this was made by my ancestors X, Y, and Z, whatever. But Elrond's Elrond's quite interesting character, because he's not that all all knowing, all powerful, wise elf that he comes across in both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, because obviously like he's lived many millennia or whatever, and so yeah, it's just interesting to see him as a young person trying to like he's still trying to make his way and like climb the ladder as such, or achieve the top level of that hierarchy. So yeah, everything dwarves, and also I've never seen a female dwarf, never, like in the Peter Jackson trilogy or the Hobbit one. I can't remember a female dwarf anyways, and so that was quite interesting. And the added detail that she is a black actress is great. Like 100%. Like I think she plays this really good role. Like she's like the moral compass for Durin the Fourth, and I think they bounce off each other quite well. And I think she'll have a big, like she's gonna her character is gonna have a bigger role
Yeah.
in the forthcoming seasons. So it's been it's really good, really good.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. I mean, before I get to Aaron, talk about Disa, because I've loved her in this as well. I didn't know, again, my limited knowledge of the books. And when I was like, yeah, we've never really had like female dwarves, and there has to be some, right? Because how else are they born? And it goes back to what we were saying about Durin is like, you missed my wedding. And it's like, well, now we've got to spend time with your wife, with your children. That adds something to their relationship. That Elrond isn't just being told you've missed it. He has to meet these people for the first time and be like, oh, like I really did like cock up here by not coming to see them. And as you said, moral compass is probably the perfect term for her. I think she's great. I'm going to get the singing scene when the ones die in the mining accident as well. And she's got the song and everything ahead. I love the fact that she believes that had Elrond not worked out her lie when he's doing his Batman watching on the top, listening in. I don't know if he's got like long distance hearing or something, but I love the fact that elves have superior hearing, don't they?
Super sight and super hearing, or they can see, because you see like when Legolas is
Always
chasing, he's all, like in they're taking the hobbits to Isengard. He can see, and like he's hunting from a distance, like with his sight and ears. Anyway,
I think it's really it's a good point, because it's fascinating that I guess we could say The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, we didn't get to see Elrond do that, because his story is very much him in the Second Age, right? That he was there with Isildur, tossed into the fire, all that sort of stuff. And I'm just going to say, I absolutely love the actor playing Robert Aramayo. People may recognize him from Game of Thrones. He played the young Ned Stark in the all the Three-Eyed Raven flashback stuff, which is really surprising. Yeah, and it's like he looks obviously a lot different, but again, when you're casting young Elrond, and to me, someone that I say is outside the fandom or something, I like Hugo Weaving in Lord of the Rings. I wouldn't say he ever got to do that much in Lord of the Rings, if I'm being honest. He's a politician, and I like the fact that we're seeing this younger Elrond who isn't there yet, that he is going to have a character arc, he's going to have a story. And I think for the majority of this season, keeping him with the dwarves, I think was probably one of the wisest things, that we got to see. I know he's an elf, but we got to see those more human qualities from him. And I think that really helps, because
I would say is sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I just I think I know you said like Elrond being with the dwarves is a good thing. It's not like because he's not really in the storyline like that, the main elf storyline, say, but I think that whole mithril story arc is going to overarch into other like most of the seasons.
The dwarves have 9 rings, right? It's 9 rings for
9 for the men, 7 for the dwarves, 3 for the elves,
and then the one great ring. We'll get to the 3 rings that we saw get made. One ring to rule them all, and we'll get to that, because that's obviously a big part. This is called the Rings of Power. Ironically, there were some people that are annoyed that they didn't make all the rings in season 1. I was like, well, it's 40 episodes. Not just going to make every ring on the season finale. But yes, the Elrond stuff I thought was great, and as you said, there's going to be a bigger thing in play here, and one of the big moments is when he has to break the oath he made to Durin. And this is where some of the writing, I think, came in much better towards him, that they spent 2-3 episodes repairing their friendship, only to chuck in the, by the way, we need that mithril or we're all going to die too. Not to put you in a bad spot, mate, but go ask the dwarves. And in turn, the dwarves are then going to raise questions. And what comes of that stuff is the great Durin moment, as we spoke about this week, where he has to confront his father about what is right and what isn't right. And it's such an interesting way for them to do it. And I think they absolutely nailed not just their relationship, but moving on to future seasons when other characters, because I kind of forgot he had a thing with Galadriel in episode 1, like as in they knew each other. So when you get to the finale, it's like, oh, I forgot, like you both already knew each other, because we've seen him for so long. with Durin across the season. And again, that's more me not watching every episode twice or something, but also in the mindset of I'm looking at this from a week to week. And when it does all tie in not a neat bow as such, but as the season 1 finale ties, we obviously get a tease. And I kind of want to ask you this before we move on to the Galadriel stuff. In the trailer, we had a big trailer moment at the Comic-Con of the Balrog with the whip. And obviously that shot wasn't used. What we do get is that there is a Balrog at the bottom of the mountain.
Well,
now,
there's a... Sorry.
I was going to say, I don't want to sit here and say I expect a Balrog. Like, we obviously know that they're going to get wiped out at Khazad-dûm between now and Lord of the Rings. Do you think the Balrog thing was a bit too much of a tease? Or like maybe because I don't know, or for you might have been that maybe this is something that we know was always going to happen? Because I'm an outsider to this. And I thought this was the first big moment for me where I was like, okay, like they're screwed eventually. Like we knew that, but we're just getting shown again like they're screwed at some point soon.
So I think that Balrogs being in the Second Age are more like it's more not attuned. What's the word? It's more coherent with like Tolkien's writing than the whole idea is like in Lord of the Rings, like, oh my gosh, a Balrog, what the hell? Like we haven't seen this since like the Second Age maybe, and so yeah, like or as we like having like because the Balrogs are like, what are they? They're like the pets of Morgoth or something. They're like these beasts that do his bidding, and the elves battle with. And so like there's a mention of a Balrog doing battle with an elf for a tree. I know it's what I can't remember. It's like it's just one of those stories like that just gets passed down from generations. That the High King asks for. Sorry. And then anyway. So the Balrog was mentioned then, and then like so that's how Mithril come to existence. But seeing the Balrog at the bottom, does that mean that we're going to see that like you know the destruction of Khazad-dûm, and like within the coming seasons? That's going to be interesting. But yeah, looking forward to it.
No, exactly. It's just something I was curious about. I think this is more of when it's more of a marketing criticism, and I think a lot of things do this. Marvel's pretty bad with it. Like, what's the great trailer shot? Okay, we've got a Balrog, that'll do. And obviously, that's not part of it. A lot of films do that. Obviously, marketing departments run differently to actual other things. But no, it's a very good point. And what we'll move into now, we've been going almost an hour, and we're going to hit the main event one. Let's talk. I don't even know I mean, this is like the main storyline, right? This is really the main storyline, the Galadriel stuff. She is the protagonist amongst this series. Morfydd Clark playing her, who I think's done a fine job. I think she's pretty amazing in this series. I know that, again, another sad issue is when it's not people getting upset with black characters or mixed race characters or Asian characters or anything. Oh no, a woman in the lead role, hiding their bed sheets, running away. Another actress that's just suffered loads of abuse for no reason. And this is I'm not going to sit here and say read book stuff, but even I know, as someone that hasn't read the books, that Sauron has always viewed Galadriel as like not his or as an equal, but somebody he can fear. Yeah. And what was crystal clear in Lord of the Rings is that she cannot go with them because she cannot herself be trusted on the mission. And even in The Hobbit, we see her like disintegrate orcs when she comes in for that council scene.
Yeah,
it's a very interesting character, and as an outsider, I'll call myself. I think she's pretty great in regards to being in this series in the leading role. That I'm going to be blunt, I didn't understand the hype to her in Lord of the Rings, but anybody that would have read the Silmarillion, would have read the books, I'm sure is. And this has been a really great way for me to, I feel, get invested in the character. Again, we've got a whole subplot, but the story does begin and end with her for the season. We see her as a child. We see her relationship with Sauron, her brother. I just want to kind of just quick ask, what are your thoughts on the performance of her before we even get into the storyline itself?
When it comes to performance, I actually warmed to her a lot over the series. I wasn't keen on her. I thought she was a bit boring, a bit slow to like in the first few episodes. But as she went on in the series, I really like. I was like, yeah, Galadriel's a badass. But yeah, no. Touching on the backlash, from fans or whatever, like because there's a strong female lead, or that doesn't fit in with how we saw her in Lord of the Rings and shit like that. So what? It's a great mechanism to move this storyline forward, regardless. Having Galadriel involved like this, we see Lord Elrond has his role. We, of course, we know that Lady Galadriel is going to be involved in um, and the battle against Sauron as well. So, seeing it and seeing her have such a involved role has been great. And it also it gives a bit of weight to the high regard we see in Lord of the Rings as well. Like Lord Elrond, Lord Lady Galadriel. Is it Gimli who cries in front of Lady Galadriel? Because he's just like so in awe of her beauty and stuff like this. So it's like, anyway, yeah. Lady Galadriel's been incredible, in my opinion. She just grew and grew. I'm not sure who the actress is, but she played like this, played a good role. What when it comes to like Galadriel and Sauron, I don't know. I'm not really keen on like that kind of dynamic and like having Sauron feel like her rival as such. I thought because Sauron is this big bad and like he's very powerful and whatnot, and I know he's going to gain power. It's not like he's just gonna. It's not like he's just gonna be like boom. Okay, here I'm super powerful. I'm ready to like take on Middle Earth, and make it my dominion. But I wanted there to be a bit more fear around Sauron. I know I'm brushing over
No, it's fine because they're in a tangent
because they interlock. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, they are. They, as you said, they kind of lock horns.
Got a combined story that they're brought together in episode 2 through to the finale. Which, if I just jump in, I've been reading it. The showrunners today have come out and said like this wasn't intended to be a big surprise that we didn't know who Sauron was. I think everyone knew it was going to be Halbrand. It was like, may I suggest something smaller than a crown? It's like, like we know that you're going to deceive them into making rings, etc., etc. But it's really interesting hearing the showrunners. They just spoke saying that there might be people that are surprised, but it's not intended to be. If you know it was going to be him, it shows at least you're invested in the show to work out who it's going to be. And I just sort of read that as them sort of politely saying like, this isn't a big deal, saying he's Sauron. Oh, and then they've made a bonkers comparison saying that like, oh, but by the way, season 2 he's going to be like Walter White, and I was like, what? He's swapping like meth for the rings. I don't really know what their game plan of that is.
Okay.
But the Sauron. Yeah, their relationship with each other is an interesting one because, again, even when he batters those people in the street, like just this ordinary dude on a raft wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah, he's literally like massacred them, and I think it was more of an awkward wait into him revealing himself as Sauron. But I know again from my limited knowledge that with Sauron, that in the second, like he's not a shapeshifter per se, but I know in the second age he has a human form, so it kind of made sense that he'd be in a human-esque form at least for now until he has the One Ring, which I'm going to assume will be like end of season 4, heading into a war for season 5 or something like that. So, I'm in a weird tangent this bit because I liked all the stuff of Numenor, but something felt missing. I don't know what that is. I just feel that in this story arc there was, because I liked Galadriel, I just, and I don't want to say just like the performance of the guy playing Sauron, but I feel like it was them saying, "Oh, we don't expect it to be too big of a surprise." I think that's them kind of saying that maybe it doesn't work, that it was so obviously going to be him. I don't think they needed to have been as blatantly, "Oh, this guy can't be trusted" type vibe. That maybe that's me reading into it too much. I don't want to come across as someone trying to be smart or something, that, "Oh, I worked something out, blah blah blah." But there's just something, I don't know. I don't want to say off either. I don't know. There's just something that to me didn't fully click with this story arc, and it is the main story arc. So if that's something future seasons make better, that's cool. But yeah, how do you feel with the Sauron stuff?
So I think when we saw his silhouette in the end of an episode, was it episode 4 or 3? I can't remember. Anyway, so like I knew from there, like you could see, like the hint was that the hand, like the glove that he's wearing. I think that is meant to be the. Oh, okay, yeah, that's Sauron. But yeah, like I know, yeah, cool. Is he's got a human form and he's gonna gain power, so like then he becomes this like formless being or whatever. But I always think like like the most feared thing is always something that doesn't have a face, because once you face it, it's like how,
Yeah.
like you can fight it. And so that's why I really like that's why Sauron has this kind of grandiose like aura about like within like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. It's like, oh shit, Sauron. But now like he's got a face, I'm like, I'm not as like I'm not getting that. I'm not as invested. I'm not, oh shit, Sauron. But yeah, Sauron's cool. It's only the beginning for him in this series.
Yeah.
So like it's like watching like a low level mobster become like the boss. You know what I mean? Like he's gaining. He's only going to gain strength going on through these seasons. So it's more of a watch and wait. Yeah. Going back, I knew because like I spot and like I saw that was going to be Sauron, and it's the same thing as soon as Nuri was like going over to see that man who landed in the like as a meteorite, I was like, oh okay, that's probably Gandalf then. Like it's just one of those things. Like I think once once you've watched it enough times or like read the books enough times, you kind of like piecing things together. But yeah, the hints were all there for both these characters. Um, what do I think of Sauron's development over the season? Um, yeah, you're not going to get like a full on like developed arc for him just yet.
Yeah.
He's just on the rise. That's it. That's the gradient's increased, but we're not going to see like like him come from
We're gonna get it ramped. I think now we know it's him, they're gonna probably
ramp up.
really ramp it
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Because the final shot is him standing upon the mountains of Mordor, which
yeah.
I'm gonna say is I didn't expect Mordor to. I'm just gonna say like probably my favorite sequence of the entire series was the volcano erupting for Mount Doom. Like I
Hmm.
didn't expect it. I don't know if people knew that's how it happened in the first place. I don't know if that was ever told as a story. But the moment in which it all kicks off and you get the imagery and you're like, oh, like we've been here the entire time. I
Hmm.
absolutely loved that. And I
Hmm.
think the actual set piece itself was incredible. All the way from the conversation in the middle with the seal door, and oh god, I forgot his dad's name. Is it Captain something?
Elendil.
Elendil. Even
Hmm.
their conversation with the horse and the patience and feeling what the owner fears,
Hmm.
etc., etc., and then we know that the mountains erupting. It was things like that I think meant a long way, and probably actually my biggest criticism I love of the show. This weird Isildur's faked death, like oh he's dead. That's annoyed me, and it's not because it's a prequel thing. it's annoyed me because Isildur is a major character for this series where it will go,
100.
and I think everyone watching at home, okay, if you've not seen Lord of the Rings, fine, but everybody knows Isildur, so it's one thing to even have this whole like, oh, is he dead? Is he not? But to make it a season cliffhanger where they imply he's died, I think is very strange. Again, I hope that's not me like looking upon us like, haha, I know what comes next. That would be like, is it like when Aragorn goes over the cliff when we know he's fine? It's like that, isn't it? Like we know he's fine, but they didn't do that between films. They they did it in the same film. So
I think, yeah, sorry, George, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just think it's one of those things where it's because we're so into it, hence why we're doing this review and things. We kind of lose sight of the fact that this may be a kid's first time being introduced to the world of Tolkien. This may be someone who just like, oh yeah, I fancy watching this after work or something like that. And so there's a lot of fresh faces and people who are so new to this is going to be a new experience to them that they don't have all that background information that we can just piece together. And so for instance, we see Elendil, right? And then I was like, oh, okay, so that's he's mentioned in Fellowship of the Ring. He's slain, and that's why Isildur, his heir, X, Y, and Z, whatever. And we know the story. And I was like, okay, so for those who don't know, Isildur is the forebear of Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and so he's he's a Dunedain, right? So people with extended length of like life for men, anyways. And so like, does that mean that Numenor's like whole citizens are Dunedain, like and things like that? So like they probably all are Dunedain. I think they are actually. And so like that was it was really cool to see like Isildur and like because I know him as like the Gondor's king and things like this, right? And so watching where that story starts from and where I know it's going to be, I'm invested as it is, right? And so I really like what they did with Isildur. I really do. I think it's really cool. But yeah, I appreciate like for someone who's probably thinking, yeah, but we know he's live. But like that cliffhanger, it maybe not is. It's not for the people in the know. It's maybe a nod in the right direction. Be like, hey, I know you know that he's going to be a huge factor in the war against Sauron. But for those who don't know, it's going to be a great cliffhanger. So yeah, I think it's cool. What they did. I'm not angry about it. I'm not. But I already know what's going to happen, kind of thing. And that you always get that issue with prequel, sequel kind of things, right? So,
yeah.
naturally. And going back to like how you loved that it was we're in Mordor the whole time, right? I think they do mention like or even if you look at like a map of Middle Earth in the Third Age, right?
It's that right hand side.
The Southlands is where Mordor is, like, and opposite the river is Gondor, and so the Southlands was. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, so that's where Mordor is. Well, that's where they're gonna have Mordor, because like if you, I think they also mention it in like either Lord of the Rings or the Hobbits. Like the men from the south are loyal to Sauron, right? And so that's always that was always in my mind, like, and they were loyal to Morgoth. They mentioned that the Southlands are like they've already been loyal to Sauron, Morgoth, and things like this. But then also going back, I just want to touch on a point. Like you mentioned, I said that maybe there's a bit more responsibility on Peter Jackson for having a bit more diversity in his cast, right? For Lord of the Rings, and because that may be where people have got their their impressions of what are there. They've got
Oh
strictly
yeah,
Caucasian.
it's like
But
long hair. All the elves aren't long haired in the books. Yet
yeah,
people are now kicking off that there's an elf with short hair.
yeah. So I was just going to touch on the point. If you remember the legions of men from the south who were loyal to Sauron, who come in Return of the King, they look South Asian. They look Arabic. They look Mediterranean. They
Are
could
those the ones on the
pass off.
elephants?
No, yeah. So the ones that Sam and Frodo see, look, an elephant. Those guys, they could quite easily pass as like, well, they're definitely not Caucasian, essentially. So like even if like people do have that kind of like that resentment against, oh yeah, this is going against the law, whatever. Not really, because Peter Jackson's done it too, so you get over yourself. But I'll put that to bed there. I just thought I'd mention it because
No,
it hit
it's,
my
it's,
mind.
it's worth bringing up. It's worth bringing up. One thing I want to speak about. So we spoke about Mount Doom. We spoke about Sauron. I want to talk about the finale to this story arc. Is obviously the creation of the three Elvish rings. Now, to my knowledge, and this is what I'm quite curious by. Those three rings are made. Well, not last. Like they're the dwarven rings and the human rings come first, right? Well, the rings for men. And I'm just going to go back to this thing of adaptation that for the story we have seen in season 1, for them knowing that Sauron has begun corrupting them, begun plotting, begun his story, I think it makes far more logical sense for the elf rings to be done first. And I think there's been enough things set up down the line where we might see some of the others later on. For example, I'd imagine Elrond is going to probably tell the dwarf straight, like, "Hey guys, go make some rings." But that's kind of what I wanted to is like to again, it's the final scene of the entire season. No, well, it's the penultimate scene because we got Sauron in Mordor, but I loved that scene, and I think the season kind of needed to end with some rings being created, not just because it's called the Rings of Power, but ultimately this is a show precursing the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, and we're gonna obviously know that at some point we're going to have them all made. Yes, it's too early for the One Ring, but I really liked the fact we got to see this process. Is it Celebrimbor? I don't know that's how you pronounce his name. I thought the actor was great that played him. I know he came in last minute. They had to. There was someone else cast that they had to remove from the role just because it just wasn't working after a few days of filming. So they did well. So I think bringing someone last minute because he had this gravitas. He looked not elvish, but I don't think they got any cast. I don't think you look at any scene and see a character and think that doesn't work. I think everyone they've cast suits the story there. And bar the really obvious, like, as you said, the men of the South that support Sauron, it was kind of like wherever you on January the 6th, 2021 vibes, right? That they're all just a bunch of crackpots that would storm, a government building if they could. And I don't mind that, but the core characters, I think, all serve their right purpose. And I just loved the scene of them making the rings. Because obviously it's a pretty big moment, right? And I'm curious what follows. Obviously, we're going to wait for you to find out. But I'm just, how do you feel with the creation of the rings for the final scene?
I'll be honest, mate. I was on episode 6 today, so I've watched the finale today, and for some reason, my short-term memory has not stored that scene at all. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, because like you're telling me about it, and I'm like, what? It's like I've not even watched it, so I will go watch it back. But you did mention that it was 3 rings, right? So like I know that 3 rings were given to the elves, right? And so I assume that they're going to deal with the elven rings first. So yeah, that's going to be very interesting. Another question I had was, those 3 dwarves that are looking for Gandalf. Are they like some evil? No,
I don't know, man. One looked like Slim
elves.
Shady.
Yeah.
I couldn't get over that. They looked like followers of Sauron in a weird. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like that stuff, and they got turned into butterflies, which was also an obvious sign we know it's Gandalf being the wizard. But that was It's almost like three devoted. How do you call it? Not like religious folk, but I guess
Sympathizers.
it's like it's like old tales, isn't like witchcraft believers. They like the things like Prometheus. If anyone's seen Prometheus, when they're that really weird opening scene. But yeah, I thought that was strange. And but the really funny thing is, I remember when they released a photo of the actress that played the main one. For some reason, everyone thought it was Sauron, so they're all like going up in arms, getting mad on the internet, and it was never ever Sauron in the first place. And I think it just really shows that people need to like have patience and not go in so quickly with trailer reactions and stuff like that. But what I want to kind of do, because we're rounding this out, we're almost gone an hour and a half, and I said we'd be an hour and a half. I'd love to ask you, because it's been a great discussion. Before we get to final thoughts on season one, favorite scenes or moments from this very quickly?
So my favorite scene I mentioned before was that during the fourth, talking to his father, King Durin, and basically like watching a son trying to deal with or grapple with the fact that he wants to honor his father and he also wants to live his own life and be his own man. And I just thought it was incredible. It's every single time I watch anything with Tolkien, the dwarves pull on your heartstrings, man. I don't know what they do, but like I've just loved how the dwarves have been this whole season. And Arthur Owen, is that what he said his name is? The actor killed it. He's incredible. And so watching that scene probably my favorite. I know it's going to have a big impact as well. This Mithril, so it's pivotal to the storyline, but it's also an incredible piece of TV, or like acting as is. So yeah, loved it.
No, that's great, and I think that is one of the best things, certainly from like a character standpoint as well. I'm going to stick with the Mordor stuff just because to me that was like a really nice
Shock.
surprise,
Yeah.
and I think it really picked up at that point from this season, and kind of heading into my final thoughts on season one. I think I'm just going to say it's fine. Like I thought it was good. It hasn't wowed me like other shows I'm currently watching, which is fine because I'm in this mindset of we are a fifth of the way through this series now. Yes, we've seen season one, but this is a 40 episode series, and I feel as far as an introductory point goes, I'm in. I'm invested in characters. I'm invested in the story. Obviously, we ultimately know where it's going to go. I second age, third age, all that sort of stuff. But I'm curious as to what's going to now fill the in between because I went into the series knowing nothing, and now I've got to sort of, obviously I know certain things. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone that's not seen it. Obviously, I know what happens with Numenor. Obviously, we know what happens with Isildur and a lot of other characters, but there's some really interesting things I'm looking forward to this series delving into. And I know they've only just started filming. I bet we probably won't have a season 2 until 2024. If we're lucky, because it's going to be a long shoot. They're not shooting season 2 in New Zealand either. There's a lot of fallouts with the New Zealand government actually due to COVID and loads of other things. So that's filming in the UK, which will be fine. Considering that
where in the UK, I want to go.
I'm going to assume a lot of it's Scotland will be Scotland. I bet a lot of mountain stuff will be Scotland, and I'd imagine like Wales, not the Midlands, but like anywhere where they can get like some visually stunning places. Amazon's going to have the money to buy them out for 3 days to shoot. So I am curious. But yeah, to me, season one, I thought season one's fine. Again, my background isn't fantasy, isn't Lord of the Rings, and I've not brought House of the Dragon too much tonight. That's where I'm sort of in the mindset of being really into. So I'm kind of curious, like your final thoughts on season one.
Final thoughts on season one. I think you got to take it for what it is. Like as you said, like it is a 40 episode agreement, so it's got so much potential. So yeah, it put all the pieces on the board where I think it's got great potential to develop into a good story. So yeah, season one, the reigning champs is a Dwarves arc for me. But Numenor and of course the Rise of Mordor is going to be very interesting. So yeah, a great season. I just wish I had enough time to actually dedicate to watch it, or like a bit more religiously. But looking forward to where it goes.
No, definitely. And with that, obviously, we do have season 2 said coming in the year we don't know, but bet on 2024. I'm going to be curious to see what happens with this over the coming years if things change for season 2. Obviously, we know location is, but I always get on not a patriotic high horse, but the UK is the best place in the world for film and TV making. There's a reason there's just more and more and more studio spaces being created and built for companies to shoot on. The crews here are at their best, and I'm really curious to see Lord of the Rings outside New Zealand. Now, I know that they'll probably do a bit of, I'd imagine they do some, when I say like, I bet they'll film in New Zealand, but it'll be like mountains that are already established. It won't be like cast there. So I'll be curious if there's any second unit there. But I'd say I'm in. You know, it's tricky with Amazon because they've got The Boys, which we love, but this is their headline show that's going to change things to come, and I think they've done an okay job. And I think there's been a lot of issues with outside opinions on this series that might have detracted, but I'd imagine most like normal people like myself, as in people that aren't familiar with the books, people that don't pride themselves on it, casual viewers, I think they'll probably enjoy most of this. But there is in this case, a dragon in the room, which is obviously the what is the best show on TV at the moment, and it kind of following what George R. R. Martin said, it should be a blessing that you've got two astronomically expensive fantasy shows airing at the same time. It does good for the genre that they're not the same products, they're not the same series, they're two completely different entities, and ultimately, the viewers win at home because they're getting more stuff to pick from than ever before, and that's kind of I'm going to try and headline that. So that's going to do it for this review today. So please do comment your thoughts on the Rings of Power. Sim, thank you again for joining me, for taking time out. I know it's very late and it's a Friday as well. I'm glad to get you back on. And yeah, everyone at home that's been commenting as well, thank you for the comments. And if you're watching it down the line, you're more than welcome to leave a comment. We'll reply to them when we can. There's a lot of things happening on the moment on the channel. I can't say subscribe for more Lord of the Rings because we won't be doing it till season 2. But if you're a fan of fantasy, there is going to be a House of the Dragon review coming when the finale airs on Monday the 24th UK. There's a lot of stuff. We've got Andor, which is streaming every Wednesday, which is a really fun series, which I hope people are enjoying as well. And we've got the Steven Spielberg retrospective, which is every Tuesday. Next week's The Bridge of Spies. That's just reminded me I need to export the review for it because I'm in London for the next 4 days, dearie me. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening at the moment. And the best way to find out about other videos is getting us on social medias, Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, a link to Red Bull's pickup merch. Now, Tate has been busy pre-recording some London Film Festival reviews. So expect at some point over the next couple of days, at least reviews for The Whale, Empire of Not Sun, that's the Spielberg film, Empire of Light, the new Sam Mendes one. He's going to be watching Knives Out 2 on Sunday. There's, I feel, another one I'm missing. I don't know. So there's a lot of things happening. We always appreciate people checking out, but we are hitting like the really, I think we're just coming on the downer from a lot of things happening recently on the channel. It's been so busy. So yeah, we're going to enjoy resting up a bit, which is why I've not been on much stuff this week. So again, Martin, thank you for commenting as always and sticking around for the review, and to everybody else. I don't know how else to round it out, if I'm being honest. What video is coming next? I don't know. There's a lot of things happening. Hey, if we're lucky, we'll be at red carpet tomorrow, but I can't even confirm or deny that right now. So if that does come true, you'll certainly see on social media. So once again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you at the next time. Take care.